Opera star Placido Domingo is out as general director of the Los Angeles Opera, a company co-founded. He stepped down yesterday, almost 2 months after multiple accusations of sexual harassment first came to light. More than 20 women have now told their stories to the Associated Press, describing unwanted kissing, groping, and suggestive overtures, while Domingo dangled jobs in front of them, and several say they feel their careers were adversely impacted after they rejected the advances. His resignation marks the latest high-profile fall from grace in the era of MeToo, not long after another ouster a little closer to home. The New England Patriots released wide receiver Antonio Brown late last month after multiple accusations against him involving sexual assault and harassment. For many, the fates of these two men offer some hope that women's claims are being taken more seriously, but that's not always the case. Remember this woman?
Brett's assault on me drastically altered my life. For a very long time, I was too afraid and ashamed to tell anyone these details.
When Christine Blasey Ford accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her when they were both in high school, she faced an onslaught of criticism as he and his political allies did their best to discredit her story as he made his way onto the Supreme Court.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. My family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations.
So, a year later, what progress has been made? I'm joined by her attorneys, who also represent one of Antonio Brown's accusers and one of the women accusing Placido Domingo. Debra, Katz, and Lisa Banks are in town to receive leadership awards from the Victims' Rights Law Center here in Boston. It's great to meet you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I'm reading the Washington Post the other day about how Brett Kavanaugh is not welcome in some places, and I first say to myself, well, he's welcome in the most powerful place in America. And then I think of what your former client had to say. Here she is at the hearing.
My family and I have been the target of constant harassment and death threats. My family and I were forced to move out of our home. Apart from the assault itself, these past couple of weeks have been the hardest of my life.
How is her life now, Debra?
Well, the threats did not end after Justice Kavanaugh was put on the court, and she continues to be the subject of coordinated attack campaigns. There are vested power interests in Washington who believe that the only way to justify Justice Kavanaugh in the court is to attack her and to suggest that she's not credible.
She had a move, right?
Many times.
And has she returned to teaching, or has she not?
She's doing something else right now, but her life has been really sidelined in very significant ways because the threats continue.
Does she regret having done what she did?
Her point coming forward was to bring information to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and she was able to do that. She felt it was her civic duty to do that, and so she doesn't regret that. However, the impact on her life has been substantial and quite negative.
How about the impact on other women's lives who come to see you? I mean, on one hand, I say, if this woman could show this kind of courage against that kind of power, another woman will be in power. But then I say to myself, a potential client says to you, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to be brutalized, accused of being a liar. And then at the end of the day, the guy who assaulted me gets elevated. So what has the impact been?
I think that it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be confirmed. The Republicans had the power, and ultimately, even though I think most of them believed that she was telling the truth, because she was, and her testimony was raw and honest for all to see, the fact is that she testified, and I think the world shifted in very significant ways. She has heard from hundreds of thousands of other women. We've heard from hundreds of thousands of people whose life fundamentally changed because she told about her experience, and it gave them the ability to tell theirs.
You're changing. I saw you nodding in agreement there. It fundamentally changed in tangible ways,
yes,
or in intangible ways. Are women more willing to come forward today than they were prior to this hearing last September?
I think so. I think that her testimony gave voice to millions of victims around the world, and what they have said is Christine's testimony gave them the courage to stand up and speak when they didn't have that courage before.
You know, I want to be optimistic, I have to say, but I was reading the story about in the Globe about you two yesterday, and I think it was you, Lisa. You were the one who went with Antonio, one of his accusers, to the NFL.
That's right.
And I think you said something like they took action. I thought they were pathetic. I mean, you sit with them for, what, 10 hours? The guy puts out a text or a tweet basically threatening your client, including photographs of her children, and they do not a damn thing. How is that progress? It's cowardice, is it not?
Well, they did take action. And
what action?
They took action by immediately calling the Patriots and Antonio Brown's representatives and told him to stop communicating with our client, which is what we asked them to do. And I don't know what communications they had with the Patriots. I know they did communicate, but within 24 hours he was cut from the Patriots.
And you think, in part, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think in part it was because of that long hearing or whatever you got in front of the NFL that started that process?
It wasn't a hearing. We wrote a letter on a Thursday night. We had a phone call on a Friday morning. He was cut from the team that afternoon.
So,
and look, this is the power of the MeToo movement. Things have fundamentally shifted. If we went to the NFL with a personal conduct violation of this type 3 years ago, it would have been buried. But the reality is that even the NFL is concerned about image in a way that it hasn't been.
You don't think if Bob
institutions...
Kraft didn't have his own problems that Antonio Hall would still be catching Tom Brady's passes?
I can't speak to that, but I can say that having a light shined on all of this makes a difference.
Okay, let me give you a couple more examples, and maybe you'll make me feel more positive at the end of this thing. Move to you in the Globe story. Here's what you said about the Domingo thing in the Globe. That might have been an argument that could have been made pre-October 2017, but the sort of the second coming of Me Too in October of 2017. But companies just can't do that anymore to say, well, we're going to give him a pass. He denied it, and that 20 women have come forward with a very similar account that can't be trusted. We're just beyond the days where that's going to work. I'm going to now say two words to you. Donald Trump. It's not 20, it's 24. The most powerful man in the world wasn't touched by totally credible allegations by 24 women.
Well, I can't say I disagree with you. It's an abomination that this man who openly bragged about sexually assaulting women won. Well, he lost the popular vote, but he's in the White House. We're stuck with that, and he lies and he lies, and it doesn't matter. But I do want to address the point that I made about Placido Domingo.
Yeah.
Initially, the Metropolitan Opera in New York was going to let him sing. And general manager made this absurd comment. Gelb made an absurd comment saying, well, people are not willing to put their names to the allegations. Our client was. But they said that because women did not put their names to the allegations, we're not crediting them. That is no longer going to be acceptable. We understand that people don't put their names on these allegations because they get savaged, and yet we still believe these women. And ultimately, Metropolitan Opera fans and employees just said no.
Okay, so I'm going to try one more, and then I'd say it's probably 2-0 in your favor.
Look, you can't be a civil rights lawyer and not trend toward optimism.
Well, here's the third one. I'm sure you saw this. These polls that were produced or published in Harvard Business Review in early 2019 about Me Too backlash. This is just right. We're talking about women discriminated against by men. Now we're talking about women discriminated against by men who would not have discriminated against them, I would argue, before Me Too. You saw 19% reluctant to hire attractive women, 21% reluctant to hire women for jobs involving close interpersonal interactions with men, 27%, this is the so-called Mike Pence rule, avoid one-on-one meetings with female colleagues. That is frightening. Yep. And it basically says you are screwed if you're a woman, if there's a man who otherwise has all noble intentions, who's afraid that he's going to be accused.
They don't have noble intentions. That's deep misogyny, this fear that women...
Just having this attitude.
Just having this attitude is a discriminatory attitude. It is a belief that women are inherently dangerous and they're going to make false allegations against men.
So how do you fix
and that's
this?
Trump.
But law is not what fixes this. I assume you would agree. Culture is what fixes this. How do you change this?
The culture has changed. Certainly this backlash is the next step that we have to combat. But society has changed fundamentally. In the last 2 years since the advent of Me Too, society has moved forward in a way that it hasn't moved forward previously. Our institutions haven't necessarily kept up with that. But they will get there. And one of the things we're going to have to fight back against are these types of attitudes and this backlash. But it's not surprising that we see this backlash when you have women standing up to men in positions of power. That has always been the case, and they're fighting back now. And we just need to redouble our efforts.
Can I say something hopeful?
You may say anything hopeful.
Midterm elections. Yeah. I mean, during the whole Kavanaugh hearing, we kept hearing from Republicans that we were giving them a gift, that we were going to lead to a Republican wave. That did not happen. Women were outraged by what they saw. in watching this hearing, and exit polls really confirmed that part of the blue wave at the midterms was a response to just anger about this sexism.
Speaking of will not happen, I mean, there was a short blip a couple of weeks ago when there was talk of impeaching Kavanaugh. That's gone with the impeachment talk, I assume, of, okay, we agree on that. One last thing for you, just off, you're a whistleblower person? Yeah, right?
Attorney, yes.
Yeah, that's why I know.
She also blows the whistle.
You've written Whistleblower Law Practitioner's Guide. Do you have to rewrite this after the last couple of weeks? Again, this is sort of a variation of a theme. I'm saying I'm a potential whistleblower. The President of the United States suggests that I may have committed a crime punishable by death. He wants to out me in clear violation of whistleblower law. Is he destroyed whistleblower protection in just 1 week of sickness?
No, this is just another example of President Trump not understanding or following the law. There are specific laws in place to protect whistleblowers, just like this one. And what he did was exactly right in following the law and what he's doing. And President Trump's attempts to out him are absolutely unacceptable, and it's not going to be allowed to happen. This is exactly why we have whistleblower laws, to protect individuals like this and to keep them from being retaliated against, which is exactly what President Trump appears to want to do.
Two most positive people I've had on the show in months. I want you to know.
You can't do this.
Congratulations
Keep the faith.
on your award. No, really, congratulations both of you. Thrilled to meet you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.